let me just kind of give you a bigger picture of what's happening. Transport is it's supply and demand, and we always talk about how it's cyclical. But when I went and looked at an economic indicator, I pulled the world GDP growth. It's actually trending up over time, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing down, barring unforeseen economic events. And then I took the orange, which is the evolution of container ship size. As there is more demand, you need more supply. So shipping lines have been increasing the size of their cargo ships. Makes sense. More freight, maybe more problems. And what has really happened is in the past few years, it's increased phenomenally. And all this puts some pressure on port infrastructure. Certainly in the Asia-Pacific trade, they had a head start, but ports in the East Coast and Gulf had to get big ship ready. This involves dredging channels, involves raising the Bayonne Bridge here, they just got 4 brand new cranes at the Port of New Jersey. And along with that, you have to deal with automation to make the cargoes flow at the port. All the landside operations have to work smoothly, so more automation sometimes run into conflict with labor unions. Now, the East Coast Gulf Port Master Contract expires September 30th. It's quiet, they're negotiating. We'll be keeping an eye on that, but that can really disrupt the transport chain. You also have a lot of environmental considerations and government compliance, and all this feeds into the shipping industry, where just 5 years ago, we were working with about 20 different shipping lines. So you had a lot out there. Now, just 5 or 6 control like 71% of the global capacity for all commodities. And all these alliances work together, all these carriers work together in shipping alliances. So they're pooling their vessels or sharing space on vessels so that they don't have to finance 7 or 8, 18,000 TEU container ships. 18,000 TEUs, when I say TEUs, it's 20 equivalent unit, it's the slots for the container ships. So all this impacts you as a shipper because you have less flexibility in how many sailings are coming from your origin country if you're bringing in internationally. So let's take an example just to kind of conceptualize this. Let's say you bring in champagne from France to the East Coast. Okay, champagne, you're going to ship out of probably Le Havre or Antwerp. And that's, in the shipping world, we call that the North Europe, North Atlantic. And you could probably go to different carrier websites, find 11 shipping companies that can offer you that service, but there's really only 3 global shipping alliances on that trade. And this impacts your supply chain greatly because you don't have sailings every few days. You have maybe 1 sailing a week. And from there, the conversation moves away from the flexibility and the transit time and schedules to price, space, and equipment availability. And here is where you work with freight forwarders or ocean transport intermediaries that ship your same commodity so that they can use their global buying power to go to the carriers and contract for space and allocation, as we call space in the shipping industry. And then also equipment. And equipment is going to depend on the container import and export imbalances in the country of origin that you're bringing it from. So working with providers allows you to bundle shipments and get more rate stability. I remember when I started, you could have an ocean freight rate good for a year. It's not going to happen that way because the shipping industry, like any capacity-driven market, you have to balance overbooking and no-shows. If not enough cargo shows up, they're going to skip a sailing. They'll call it a blank sailing. If too much cargo shows up, you get a rolled booking. So it's really where we can get forecasting and commitment from both the suppliers that you're working with, as well as your inbound volumes, then you can have better outcomes in the industry. Now, once you get your freight on board a vessel in North Europe, then where is it going to go? All these three alliances are competing for New York, New Jersey. It's the first port of call. It's next to a big consumer market. And you can see on this chart, it gets about 9 port calls a week. So if you wanted to ship to Boston, you're going to have to really manage your lead times because the carriers are not going to Boston. Now, this leads into a situation where the Port of New York, New Jersey, as more volume comes in, gets a lot more congested. And if you're curious, this shows the ports in the US by volume, TEU volume, which is 20 equivalent unit. And the West Coast gets the most on the Trans-Pacific trade, but now that the Panama Canal has expanded, bigger ships are going to the East Coast, and we're going to see a lot more coming out of South Atlantic as well, where they're doing a lot of investment in even port-to-rail intermodal options.